I stood alone in my wedding dress, phone in hand, reading the text from my mother. "Sorry, honey, we can't make it today. Your brother's trip to Florida was already planned. We didn't think you'd go through with the wedding without us." Tears blurred my vision as I stared at my reflection. 1 year of planning, countless reminders. Yet they chose my golden child brother Jackson over my most important day. The makeup artist touched my shoulder. "Ready?" I straightened my spine. "Yes. The ceremony starts in 30 minutes. Growing up as the firstborn daughter in the Walker family should have been special, but from the moment my brother Jackson arrived 3 years after me, I might as well have become invisible. I can still remember the day I realized I would always be second best. I was 7 years old, performing in my first piano recital. I had practiced for weeks, my small fingers diligently learning each note of "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." My parents promised they would be in the front row, but when I walked onto the stage in my new blue dress, scanning the audience, their seats were empty. I played anyway, making 3 mistakes, because I couldn't stop looking at those vacant chairs. When I got home, my mother barely looked up from where she was bandaging Jackson's knee. "Sorry we missed it, Jillian. Jackson fell off his bike right before we were supposed to leave. You understand, right?" I did understand, even at 7. Jackson came first, always. This pattern repeated throughout our childhood in suburban Pennsylvania. My straight-A report cards earned quick nods, while Jackson's C+ in math warranted celebratory ice cream. My acceptance to the honors program merited a distracted "good job," while Jackson making the junior varsity basketball team called for a special family dinner. By high school, I had accepted my role in the family. I became self-sufficient out of necessity. I applied for colleges alone, figured out financial aid forms by myself, and when acceptance letters arrived, celebrated quietly in my room. Meanwhile, my parents took Jackson on tours of potential schools, though his grades barely qualified him for community college. When I graduated with honors from Penn State with a degree in architectural design, my parents arrived 20 minutes late to the ceremony and left immediately after to attend Jackson's intramural softball game. I sat alone at what should have been my graduation dinner, picking at my pasta until the waitress asked if everything was okay. "Just waiting for my family," I said, though I knew they wouldn't come. Everything changed when I met Tanner during my second year at an architecture firm in Philadelphia. We were both working late, the only 2 souls in the office at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday evening. He had ordered too much Thai food and offered to share. By midnight, we were still talking, empty containers between us, drawings forgotten. Tanner listened. Really listened. When I hesitantly shared stories about my family, expecting him to dismiss my feelings as I had been trained to do, he instead grew indignant on my behalf. "That's not normal, Jillian," he said after hearing about my 16th birthday, when my parents had forgotten to pick me up from school because Jackson had a cold. "You deserve better." No one had ever suggested that before. It was revolutionary. As our relationship deepened over the next 2 years, I began to see my family dynamics through Tanner's eyes. His family was warm, attentive, and treated each of their 3 children with equal love and respect. The first time I joined them for Sunday dinner, his mother asked detailed questions about my career and actually remembered the answers the next time I visited. His father helped me carry dishes to the kitchen and thanked me for bringing dessert. It was foreign and wonderful. When Tanner proposed on a crisp autumn morning in Fairmount Park, surrounded by golden leaves and the promise of a different kind of family, I said yes without hesitation. That night, as we celebrated with champagne in our apartment, I made a decision. "I want my family at our wedding," I told Tanner. "I know they've disappointed me before, but this is different. This is my wedding. Surely they'll show up for that, right? Maybe this can be our fresh start." Tanner looked skeptical, but supportive. "If that's what you want, we'll make it happen. Let's give them plenty of notice, so there can be no excuses." So when we set our date for June 12th the following year, giving us a full 12 months to plan, the first people I called were my parents. "Mom, Dad, I have wonderful news," Tanner proposed. And we've already set our wedding date for next June 12th. Please mark your calendars now. It's really important to me that you're there." My mother sounded genuinely excited for the first time I could remember. "Oh, Jillian, that's wonderful news. We'd love to help with the planning. Maybe I could come look at wedding dresses with you?" My father chimed in on the extension. "And we might be able to help a little financially. Nothing extravagant, but something to get you started." I hung up feeling lighter than I had in years. Maybe this was the turning point I'd been waiting for. Maybe my wedding would finally be the event important enough to earn my place as their equal. 3 weeks later, I drove to my parents' house for Sunday dinner. Something I rarely did anymore, but felt newly motivated to attend. I wanted to show them some venue brochures and start discussing details. I arrived early and let myself in with my old key. From the kitchen, I could hear my parents on the phone, their voices animated in a way they rarely were when speaking to me. "That sounds amazing, Jackson," my mother was saying. "Florida in June is perfect. We've always wanted to visit the Keys." My stomach clenched as I heard my father add, "We'll definitely join you. We could make it a full family vacation if you're going to be there 2 weeks. When exactly was it again?" "June 10th through 24th. I heard my brother reply through the speakerphone. "The guys got an amazing deal on a beach house in Key West. You guys are gonna love it." I stepped into the kitchen, brochures clutched to my chest. "That overlaps with my wedding," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "June 12th, remember? I told you 3 weeks ago." My parents had the decency to look momentarily uncomfortable before my mother waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, Jillian, that's still a whole year away. We can figure it out later." Nothing set in stone with Jackson's trip yet, but I could see in their eyes that they had already decided. Even as they oohed and asked over the venue pictures I'd brought, asking appropriate questions about catering and flowers, I knew I was already losing the battle for their attention on my wedding day. When I left that evening, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at their comfortable suburban home with its neat garden and fresh paint, wondering how a place I'd grown up in could feel so unwelcoming. I called Tanner, tears streaming down my face. "They're planning a trip to Florida with Jackson during our wedding week. Did you remind them about the date?" "Of course I did. They said they'd figure it out later. You know what that means." Tanner's sigh carried through the phone. "I'm sorry, Gil. Come home. We'll figure this out together." I started the car, taking one last look at the house where the lights were still on, my parents likely still discussing Jackson's exciting vacation plans, my brochures already forgotten on the kitchen counter. Despite my concerns, I threw myself into wedding planning with determined optimism. Our venue, a restored 19th century barn about 40 minutes outside Philadelphia, was perfect with its weathered wooden beams and wall of windows overlooking rolling hills. When I called my mother to tell her we'd secured it with a $3,000 non-refundable deposit, she seemed distracted. "That sounds nice, dear. Speaking of deposits, your father and I were looking at flights to Florida for Jackson's trip. Prices keep going up, so we might book soon to lock in the rates." I swallowed hard. "But what about the wedding? Have you figured out how you'll make both work yet?" "We're still working on it," she said vaguely. "Anyway, tell me more about this barn." I described the venue in detail, emphasizing the date again. Before hanging up, I said, "I'm sending you a calendar invite right now, and I'll add it to the family Google Calendar too." I sent similar reminders weekly, sometimes daily. I created a wedding website with a prominent countdown clock. I mailed physical, save the date cards, then formal invitations. Each time I spoke with my parents, I mentioned the date. Meanwhile, wedding planning continued. Tanner's mother, Linda, accompanied me to dress fittings when my own mother claimed she was too busy. Linda teared up when I emerged from the dressing room in a simple A-line gown with delicate lace sleeves. "You look beautiful, Jillian," she said, squeezing my hand. "Tanner is going to be speechless." I blinked back tears, grateful for her presence, while acutely aware of my mother's absence. My best friend Melanie, whom I'd known since college, became my wedding planning ally. She came to every appointment, took detailed notes, and kept me focused when anxiety about my family threatened to overwhelm me. "Have your parents confirmed they're coming yet?" she asked one afternoon as we reviewed flower arrangements. "Not exactly," I admitted. "They keep saying they're working on it." Melanie frowned. "It's been 4 months since you set the date. What's the holdup?" I explained about Jackson's Florida trip, watching Melanie's expression shift from confusion to disbelief to anger. "Let me get this straight. Your brother is planning a vacation during your wedding, which you scheduled a year in advance, and your parents are considering going with him instead of attending your wedding." When she put it that way, the absurdity of the situation hit me full force. They claim they might be able to do both somehow, but they haven't explained how. "That's messed up, Jillian. You know that, right?" I nodded, throat tight. "I keep thinking if I remind them enough, they'll realize how important this is to me." 6 months before the wedding, I was at work when my phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. "Florida trip officially booked. 2 weeks in paradise with the boys. June 10 to 24. Mom and Dad coming too for family bonding time, LOL." My hands shook as I called my mother. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice cautious. "Is it true?" I asked without preamble. "Have you booked tickets to Florida during my wedding?" A long pause. "Jillian, we didn't have much choice. Jackson's friends got this amazing deal, but it was time-sensitive. The deposits were non-refundable. My venue deposit was non-refundable too. I told you about this a year in advance." "I know, honey, but these things happen. Have you considered moving your wedding? Maybe to July? The weather would be just as nice." I nearly dropped the phone. "Move my wedding? Are you serious right now? We've booked everything. Paid deposits. Sent invitations. All because I told you the date a year ago, and you said you'd be there." "There's no need to get hysterical," my mother said, her tone cooling. "We're trying to find a solution that works for everyone." "A solution that works for Jackson, you mean?" I said bitterly. "Just admit it. You'd rather go on vacation with him than attend my wedding." "That's not fair, Jillian. We love you both equally." The lie was so blatant I actually laughed, a sharp, painful sound that caused my coworker to look up in concern. "Sure you do, Mom. Let me know when you figure out how to be in 2 places at once." I hung up. That evening, I had a cake tasting scheduled with Tanner. The bakery owner had laid out 12 different samples, from traditional vanilla to exotic passion fruit. Under normal circumstances, this would have been one of the most enjoyable parts of wedding planning. Instead, I burst into tears after the first bite. "Gil, what's wrong?" Tanner put his arm around me while the baker discreetly stepped away. "They've booked tickets to Florida. They're going on vacation with Jackson during our wedding." I sobbed against his shoulder. "They suggested we move the wedding date." Tanner stiffened. "Are you kidding me? After all the money we've already spent? After you've told them repeatedly for months? I don't know what else to do. I've tried everything." He tilted my chin up, his eyes serious. "Listen to me. We are getting married on June 12th. With or without them. This day is about us, not them. And frankly, if they can't be bothered to show up, maybe we're better off without them there." It was the first time either of us had voiced this possibility aloud. The thought of getting married without my parents was painful, but their continued dismissal of one of the most important days of my life was worse. I wiped my eyes and picked up another cake sample. "The lemon with raspberry filling is really good," I said, making a decision to push forward. The baker returned with a sympathetic smile. "Family drama? Weddings bring it out like nothing else." "You have no idea," I replied, attempting a smile. "Let's talk about frosting options." As we left the bakery, having chosen a 3-tier cake with different flavors for each layer, Tanner took my hand. "Whatever happens with your parents, you have me, and my family, and Melanie, and all our friends. People who actually show up for you." It was a bittersweet realization that the people who had become my chosen family might be the only ones standing with me on my wedding day. 3 months before the wedding, with final details coming together and still no clear commitment from my parents, I decided a face-to-face conversation was necessary. I cleared my schedule for a Friday, driving 4 hours to my parents' suburban home unannounced. When I pulled into the driveway, my mother's surprise was evident as she opened the door in her gardening clothes. "Jillian, we weren't expecting you. Is everything okay?" "We need to talk about the wedding," I said, carrying my portfolio of wedding materials into the house. "I need to know if you and Dad are coming." My father emerged from his study, looking equally startled by my presence. "Of course we want to be at your wedding, Gilpill," he said, using a childhood nickname that now felt hollow. "We're just trying to work out the logistics." I spread my materials across their dining room table. Photos of my venue decorated for a wedding similar to mine, a sample of my invitations, color swatches for the bridesmaids' dresses, and finally, a picture of me in my wedding gown, though tradition said the groom shouldn't see it. I wanted my parents to. "This is real," I said firmly. "This is happening in 3 months. June 12th. I need to know if my own parents will be there." My mother picked up the photo of me in my dress, and for a moment, something softened in her expression. "You look beautiful, honey." Hope flickered in my chest until she set the photo down and continued. "Did I tell you about Jackson's promotion? They're making him assistant manager at the sporting goods store. At only 27. We're so proud of him." The whiplash from her brief moment of connection back to Jackson was dizzying. "Mom, can we please stay on topic? Will you and Dad be at my wedding?" My parents exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. My father cleared his throat. "We've been discussing options. The thing is, we've already paid for the Florida trip, non-refundable tickets, and our portion of the beach house rental. So have you figured out how to do both? Will you fly back for the wedding day?" Another uncomfortable look between them. My mother spoke hesitantly. "Well, we thought maybe we could come for just the ceremony. If it could be scheduled early enough in the day, we might be able to attend, and then catch an evening flight to join Jackson afterward." The realization that they were planning to attend only the ceremony, not the reception, not the dinner, not the first dance or cake cutting hit me like a physical blow. "You want to show up for the 30-minute ceremony and then leave immediately to go on vacation with Jackson?" They had the grace to look embarrassed. "It's not ideal," my father admitted, "but it's the best compromise we could come up with." I gathered my photos and papers with shaking hands. "I'll think about it," I said, though inside I was screaming. Before leaving, I wandered into the living room and noticed their fireplace mantel had been updated with new family photos. There were at least 6 recent pictures of Jackson, at a baseball game, on a fishing trip, at Christmas. The only photo of me was from my college graduation, nearly 6 years old, and it was partially hidden behind a decorative vase. On the coffee table sat a stack of travel brochures for the Florida Keys. A yellow sticky note marked one page. "Sunset Cruise. Perfect for our dinner the night of the 12th. The night of my wedding. I left without saying goodbye, driving aimlessly until I found myself at a small park where Jackson and I had played as children. I called Melanie, who listened as I recounted the visit. "What are you going to do?" she asked when I finished. "I don't know. Part of me wants to tell them not to bother coming at all if they can't stay for the whole day. Another part is so desperate for their approval that I'm considering taking whatever scraps of attention they're willing to give." "What would make your wedding day better? Having them there briefly, knowing they're rushing off to be with Jackson, or not having that cloud hanging over everything?" It was a question I needed to consider carefully. Before heading back to Philadelphia, I made one more stop. Jackson lived in an apartment about 20 minutes from our parents. I hadn't told him I was coming, but I knew he usually spent Saturday mornings at home. He answered the door in sweatpants, looking surprised. "Jillian, what are you doing here? Can we talk? About Florida and my wedding?" He shrugged and let me in. His apartment was messy, sports equipment and empty beer cans cluttering the surfaces. I sat on the edge of his couch while he lounged in a recliner. "I need you to understand something, Jackson. I scheduled my wedding a year in advance. I told everyone the date. I reminded people constantly. And then you planned a vacation that overlaps with it, and invited our parents. He picked at a loose thread on his chair. The dates worked best for my buddies. It wasn't personal. But it became personal when you invited Mom and Dad, knowing they would have to choose between us. Again. Look, I didn't tell them they had to come, he said defensively. That was their decision. Could you change your dates? Even by a few days? So they could attend my entire wedding and still join you afterward? He looked at me as if I'd suggested he donate a kidney. Are you serious? Everything's booked, non-refundable. 5 other guys are counting on these dates. Why should I inconvenience everyone? Because you picked that particular Saturday. Because it's my wedding, Jackson. The one day in my life I'm asking everyone to show up for me. He rolled his eyes. It's just a big party. You and Tanner will be just as married whether Mom and Dad are there for the whole thing or not. In that moment, I realized this conversation was pointless. Jackson had been the center of our family universe for so long that he couldn't even comprehend why I was upset. You're right, I said, standing to leave. We'll be just as married. Thanks for your time. Back in Philadelphia, I attended my final dress fitting with Linda, Tanner's mother, who had been a consistent source of support throughout the planning process. As the seamstress pinned the last adjustments, I received a text from my mother. Dad and I have been thinking. If you could move the ceremony to 11 a.m. instead of 2 p.m., we could definitely make it and still catch our 5 p.m. flight to Florida. I showed the text to Linda, whose normally kind expression hardened. They're not even planning to stay for the reception? After you specifically scheduled this a year in advance? Apparently not. Jillian, may I speak frankly? At my nod, she continued. I've watched you bend over backwards, trying to accommodate your parents, sending reminders, making phone calls, driving hours to see them. And they still can't give you one full day. One day that's supposed to be about celebrating you and Tanner. Tears welled in my eyes, ruining the makeup I'd had done for my dress-fitting photos. You deserve better, Linda said, echoing words Tanner had said to me years earlier. Whatever you decide about the ceremony time, know that you have a family who loves you unconditionally. It might not be the family you were born into, but it's no less real. As the seamstress discreetly handed me tissues, I made a mental note to check with the venue about changing the ceremony time. Not because I wanted to accommodate my parents' flight, but because I needed to decide, once and for all, whether their partial presence would add anything positive to my day. 2 weeks before the wedding, with final details falling into place and my anxiety reaching new heights, Tanner suggested I talk to someone professional. Just a session or two, he said, to help process everything that's happening with your family. I reluctantly agreed, finding a therapist who could see me on short notice. Dr. Reeves had a calm office with comfortable chairs and none of the cliché decor I expected. She listened attentively as I explained my family history and the current wedding situation. It seems you've been seeking your parents' approval and attention your entire life, she observed after I finished. And this wedding has become the ultimate test of whether they value you. I guess that's true, I admitted. I keep thinking if I just find the right words, the perfect approach, they'll finally see me. What if they don't? She asked gently. What if, regardless of what you do or say, they continue to prioritize your brother? The question hit me hard. What if nothing ever changed? I need to consider that possibility, I said slowly. Let me ask you something else, Dr. Reeves continued. If your parents attend only the ceremony and then immediately leave for their vacation, how will that make you feel during your reception? I considered this carefully. Probably sad, embarrassed, like I'm still not enough. And if they don't attend at all? Initially devastating, I admitted. But maybe free? Free to enjoy the day with people who actually want to be there? She nodded. Sometimes the absence of harmful people creates space for healing. This doesn't mean giving up on your relationship with your parents forever. It means setting boundaries about what you will accept on one of the most important days of your life. I left that session with a new perspective. For years, I had been chasing something my parents seemed incapable of giving equal consideration to their son. Perhaps it was time to stop running that race. That evening, as Tanner and I reviewed our final RSVP list, I noticed something striking. Out of 120 confirmed guests, over 80 were from Tanner's side or our mutual friends. Only a handful were my blood relatives, mostly distant cousins and one supportive aunt. Yet I didn't feel unloved. Quite the opposite. These people, Tanner's warm, welcoming family, our loyal friends, colleagues who had become much more, had shown up for me consistently in ways my parents never had. "Have your parents confirmed whether they're coming to the ceremony yet?" Tanner asked, noticing I was checking my phone. "No," and I realized something. They haven't even booked a hotel room. I reserved a block of rooms 6 months ago, sent them all the information, and they never booked. Maybe they're staying somewhere else? I shook my head. I called my mom last week to ask about their arrival time, and she was vague, said they were still working out details. 2 weeks before the wedding, and they're still working out details? Tanner's frustration was evident. "Jillian, at what point do we accept that they're not treating this with the respect it deserves?" I set down my phone, a strange calm settling over me. "You're right. They're not coming. Or if they do show up for the ceremony, it will be rushed and stressful, and they'll be checking their watches the whole time. What do you want to do?" I took a deep breath. I want to have the wedding we planned, at the time we planned it, surrounded by people who are fully present and genuinely happy for us. If my parents can't be those people, that's their loss. Tanner pulled me into a hug. "I'm with you, whatever you decide." That night, I wrote a carefully worded email to my parents. "Mom and Dad, after much consideration, I've decided to keep our ceremony at the originally planned time of 2 p.m. on June 12th. I understand this may conflict with your travel plans to Florida. I want you to know that I would love for you to be present for my entire wedding day ceremony and reception. However, I recognize that you have other commitments that you feel you cannot change. Please let me know by the end of this week if you will be attending any part of the wedding so I can finalize arrangements. Love, Jillian." I didn't receive a response for 3 days. When my phone finally rang with my father's number, I steeled myself before answering. "Jillian, it's Dad. Mom and I got your email. And," he sighed heavily, "we've looked at flights, and there just isn't a good option that would let us attend the ceremony and still make it to Florida that night. The latest flight we could take would require us to leave your ceremony by 3:30. So what are you saying, Dad?" "We're saying, maybe it would be best if we catch up when everyone is back from their trips. We could have a nice family dinner to celebrate." Despite expecting this outcome, the finality of it struck me like a physical blow. "Let me get this straight. You're choosing not to attend my wedding at all so you can go on vacation with Jackson?" "It's not that simple, Gil. Actually, it is that simple. I gave you a year's notice. I've reminded you constantly. I offered to change the ceremony time, and you still chose him. Now that's not fair. No, what's not fair is having parents who have never, not once in my life, put me first. What's not fair is watching my brother manipulate you for years while I tried to be the perfect, self-sufficient daughter. What's not fair is having to accept that on my wedding day, I'll be walking down the aisle without my father because he'd rather be on a beach in Florida." My voice had risen, and I was shaking with a mixture of grief and rage. "Jillian, please try to understand." "I understand perfectly, Dad. Enjoy your vacation. I'll be getting married surrounded by people who actually want to be there." I hung up and burst into tears. Tanner, who had been giving me privacy for the call but staying nearby, immediately wrapped his arms around me. "They're not coming," I sobbed. "Not even for the ceremony. I'm sorry, Gil. I'm so sorry they can't see what they're missing." As my tears subsided, an unexpected feeling emerged through the pain, relief. The constant anxiety of wondering whether my parents would show up, how long they would stay, what excuses they would make it was over. The worst had happened, and I was still standing. The next morning, I received a text from an unknown number. Curious, I opened it. Hey sis, heard you had a meltdown with the parents. Too bad you couldn't be more flexible with your big day. Don't worry, I'll send you a nice souvenir from Key West. Maybe you can use it at your next wedding when this one inevitably fails because of your bridezilla tendencies. Jay. I stared at the text, realizing Jackson had gotten a new phone number I didn't have saved, but the content of his message made my blood boil. I started to type an angry response, then deleted it. Instead, I blocked his number and took a screenshot to show Tanner. When Tanner saw the message, his normally calm demeanor darkened. What kind of brother says something like that? The kind who spent his entire life being told he's the center of the universe, I replied. But you know what? I feel sorry for him. His entire identity is built on being the favorite child. What happens when real life doesn't give him that same preferential treatment? Tanner shook his head. His loss. And your parents' loss. Meanwhile, we're going to have an amazing wedding. 3 hours later, as if on cue, I received a text from my mother. Jillian, we've thought it over and decided it's best if we stick with our original plans. It would be too rushed to attend the ceremony and then leave for our flight. We'll celebrate with you when we all return. I'm sorry if this upsets you, but these things happen in families. I showed Tanner the text. She still doesn't get it. These things don't just happen in families. Parents don't just accidentally skip their daughter's wedding for a vacation. What do you want to do? Do you want to respond? I considered this, then typed, I understand your decision. I will be getting married on June 12th as planned. I hope you enjoy your vacation. It was brief and final. No arguments, no pleading, no angry accusations. Just acceptance that this was who my parents were, and no special occasion, not even my wedding, would change that fundamental truth. With just 3 days until the wedding, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. The worst had happened, and yet I was still moving forward with the man I loved and the life we were building together. Perhaps that was the greatest victory of all. I woke up on my wedding day to sunlight streaming through the curtains of the boutique hotel where I'd spent the night with my bridesmaids. For a moment, in that hazy space between sleep and wakefulness, I reached for my phone, half expecting a message from my parents saying they'd changed their minds. There was nothing. Melanie knocked softly before entering, with a tray holding coffee and pastries. The bride awakens. How are you feeling? I sat up, considering the question honestly. Surprisingly okay. Maybe even good. Really? After everything? I nodded, accepting the coffee she offered. I think I've been preparing for my parents to disappoint me my entire life. Now that it's actually happened in the biggest way possible, there's nothing left to fear. Melanie sat on the edge of the bed. Gil, I need to tell you something. Your brother called me yesterday. My stomach dropped. What? How does he even have your number? From the group chat when we all went to that concert last year, remember? Anyway, he asked if you were really going through with the wedding. Said your parents were worried you might cancel out of spite. I nearly choked on my coffee. Out of spite? They're the ones who chose a vacation over being here. I know. I told him you were absolutely getting married today, and he got weird. Said something about how you've always been dramatic and attention-seeking. What did you say? Melanie grinned. I told him that as someone who's known you for 8 years, I've never met anyone less attention-seeking in my life. Then I hung up and blocked his number. I laughed, feeling a surge of gratitude for this fierce friendship. Thank you. Now, she said, standing up, we have a schedule to keep. Hair and makeup team arrives in 30 minutes. Linda texted that she'll be here at 10 with the champagne and your something borrowed. The morning passed in a blur of activity. My 3 bridesmaids and I got ready together. Music playing, occasional tears quickly dabbed away to preserve makeup. Linda arrived as promised, bearing champagne, a vintage pearl bracelet that had belonged to Tanner's grandmother, your something borrowed, and a quiet, steady presence that calmed my occasional flashes of anxiety. As the makeup artist put the finishing touches on my face, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and barely recognized the woman looking back. Not because of the makeup or the elegant updo, but because of the confidence in her eyes. This was not the same Jillian who had spent years seeking parental approval that never came. This was someone stronger. "You look beautiful," Linda said, helping me step into my dress, truly radiant. "Thank you," I whispered, suddenly overcome with emotion. Not just for being here today, but for everything. For showing me what a mother's love is supposed to look like. Linda blinked back tears, careful of her makeup. "Oh, Jillian, being part of your life has been a joy. Tanner couldn't have chosen a better partner, and I couldn't have wished for a more wonderful daughter-in-law." As the bridesmaids bustled around, gathering bouquets and making last-minute adjustments, I felt a momentary pang thinking of my father. In all my wedding planning, I'd never considered who would walk me down the aisle if he wasn't there. It had seemed unthinkable. When I mentioned this to Melanie, she squeezed my hand. "You have options. Tanner's dad offered last night, or one of your friends, or, and I think this might be the most powerful choice, you could walk yourself down the aisle." The idea resonated immediately. Walk myself down the aisle? Is that even done? It's your wedding. You can do whatever feels right to you. By the time we arrived at the venue, I had made my decision. The restored barn looked even more beautiful than I remembered, with wildflowers and twinkling lights transforming it into something magical. Through the windows, I could see guests arriving, being seated by the ushers. I searched for my parents out of habit before reminding myself they wouldn't be there. Tanner's father found me in the small side room where we were waiting for the ceremony to begin. "Jillian, you look stunning. My son is a very lucky man." "Thank you, Richard." I hesitated. "I understand you offered to walk me down the aisle." He nodded. "Only if you want. No pressure at all." "I appreciate that more than I can say. But I think I'd like to walk by myself. It feels right somehow." Understanding filled his kind eyes. "I think that's a perfect choice. And I'm proud to be gaining you as a daughter today." The wedding coordinator appeared, signaling that it was almost time. My bridesmaids lined up, Melanie giving me one last hug before taking her place at the front of the line. "Ready?" the coordinator asked. I took a deep breath. Ready. As the music changed and the guests rose to their feet, I began my solitary walk down the aisle, but I didn't feel alone. Every face I passed was smiling, supportive, genuinely happy to be there. And at the end of the aisle stood Tanner, his eyes filling with tears as he watched me approach. In that moment, surrounded by people who had chosen to be present, who had made our day a priority, I realized something profound. I was exactly where I was supposed to be, with exactly the right people. The ceremony was everything I had hoped for, personal, emotional, and filled with promises we both intended to keep. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the cheers from our guests seemed to fill the entire building. During the cocktail hour, as Tanner and I took photos on the property, my phone buzzed in the hidden pocket of my dress. I pulled it out to find a series of texts from my mother. "Jillian, we just saw photos of the ceremony on Facebook. Someone is already posting them. We can't believe you went through with it without us there. We thought you would postpone when you realized we couldn't make it. This is very hurtful. Please call us immediately. Your father is very upset." I stared at the phone in disbelief. They had expected me to cancel or postpone my wedding because they chose a vacation instead? The audacity was breathtaking. Before I could respond, another text came through. "If you had really wanted us there, you would have worked harder to find a date that worked for everyone in the family. This feels like you deliberately excluded us." Tanner noticed my expression. "What's wrong?" I showed him the texts, watching his face cycle through shock, anger, and finally, sad resignation. "They really don't get it, do they?" he said. "No, and they never will." I handed my phone to Melanie, who had joined us for photos. "Can you hold on to this for the rest of the day, and maybe turn it off?" "Absolutely." She read the messages, her jaw tightening. "You don't need this negativity today. Or any day," I added, feeling suddenly lighter. "Let's go celebrate with people who actually want to be here." The reception was magical, delicious food, heartfelt toasts, and a dance floor that stayed packed until the very end of the night. Tanner's father gave a touching speech, welcoming me to the family with such genuine warmth that I forgot to miss my own father's absence. For our first dance, Tanner held me close as, "At Last," played. The lyrics about finding true love after a long wait, feeling particularly appropriate. "How are you doing?" he murmured in my ear as we swayed. "Honestly, I'm happy. Really, truly happy. Even without them here, I considered this. Maybe even because they're not here. There's no tension, no watching the clock, no wondering when they might leave for their flight. Just us, and people who love us." As the dance ended and other couples joined us on the floor, I caught sight of Linda and Richard dancing nearby. They smiled at me, a simple gesture that contained so much acceptance and affection. That night, as Tanner and I collapsed into bed in our hotel suite, exhausted but elated, I realized I hadn't thought about my parents for hours. Their absence, which had loomed so large in the months leading up to the wedding, had ultimately made no difference to the joy of the day. "We did it," I murmured, curling against my new husband's side. "We're married. Mrs. Harris," he said, trying out my new surname. "Has a nice ring to it." "It does," I agreed, feeling the weight of my old identity, the perpetually disappointing daughter slipping away, replaced by something new and untarnished. A very nice ring indeed. Our 2-week honeymoon in Portugal was a blissful escape from reality, leisurely days exploring cobblestone streets, evenings savoring local wines, and not once checking our phones for messages from my family. I made a conscious decision to remain present with Tanner, to fully inhabit our first weeks as a married couple without the shadow of family drama. But reality, as it always does, eventually reasserted itself. Upon returning to Philadelphia, I reluctantly turned my phone back on to find dozens of messages from my parents, each more self-righteous than the last. "We're extremely disappointed in your behavior. You've always been stubborn, but this takes it to a new level. Jackson says you blocked his number. Very mature, Jillian. We expect an apology when we return from Florida." I showed the messages to Tanner, who had been scrolling through his own phone. "They want me to apologize to them for getting married on the date I told them about a year in advance." "I'm not surprised," he said. "But look at this." He handed me his phone, opened to Instagram. My parents' account showed dozens of photos from their Florida vacation, many with captions that felt like deliberate jabs. "Family time is the best time, and nothing more important than making memories with those who truly matter." But it was a photo from June 12th, my wedding day, that truly stunned me. My parents and Jackson on a sunset cruise, champagne glasses raised, with the caption, "Celebrating family bonds that can never be broken, no matter what." Some people understand what really matters in life. "Did they really post that on our wedding day?" I whispered. Tanner nodded grimly and tagged Jackson in it. He commented, "Some people will always choose attention-seeking over family loyalty. Their loss." I set the phone down, strangely calm. "You know what? This makes it easier. They're showing exactly who they are, publicly, for everyone to see." "Several of our wedding guests have commented calling them out," Tanner noted. "Your old college roommate Rachel was particularly eloquent about parents who choose favorites." I spent the next few days settling back into normal life, unpacking, writing thank you notes for wedding gifts, and adjusting to being called Mrs. Harris. I purposely didn't contact my parents, curious to see how long it would take them to return from Florida and appear on my doorstep, demanding that apology they seemed to think they deserved. The answer was exactly 1 week after our return. I was alone in our apartment on a Saturday afternoon, Tanner having gone to pick up groceries, when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing in the hallway, looking impatient. I took a deep breath and opened the door. "Jillian," my mother said, stepping forward as if to enter without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk." I didn't move from the doorway. "Yes, we do. But I'll set the terms of this conversation, not you." My father frowned. That's no way to speak to your mother. Actually, it's a perfectly reasonable way to speak to someone who skipped my wedding to go on vacation, then demanded an apology from me. They exchanged glances before my mother spoke again, her tone softer. May we please come in, Jillian? We've driven all this way. I hesitated, then stepped aside. You have 15 minutes. Tanner will be back soon. They sat stiffly on our couch while I took the armchair opposite, an arrangement that felt appropriately formal for what was about to transpire. We're very hurt by what you did, my mother began. Going ahead with the wedding when you knew we couldn't be there. Chose not to be there, I corrected. There's a difference. We had prior commitments, my father insisted. The tickets were non-refundable. So were my venue deposits, which I told you about a year in advance. You're being very inflexible, my mother said. We offered to attend the ceremony if you'd moved it earlier, and then leave immediately after to catch a flight to Florida, missing the reception, the dinner, the first dance, everything except the bare minimum. It was the best compromise we could offer, my father said. I stood up and walked to the small desk in the corner of our living room, retrieving a folder I had prepared before the wedding but never expected to actually use. I want to show you something, I said, returning to my seat and opening the folder. This is a record of every time I told you about my wedding date. Email confirmations of the save the dates I sent 13 months ago. Screenshots of the 14 separate text messages where I specifically mentioned the date. Call logs of the 23 times I discussed wedding planning with you, each time confirming the date. My parents shifted uncomfortably as I continued. And here's something else I've compiled. A spreadsheet tracking significant events in my life versus Jackson's, and which ones you attended. I handed them several printed pages. You've attended 78% of Jackson's events, games, graduations, work promotions, birthday parties. For me, it's 22%. And that's being generous, counting events you showed up late to or left early from. You kept records? My mother asked, sounding disturbed. That's not normal, Jillian. What's not normal is parents who consistently choose one child over the other for 29 years. As they flipped through the pages, looking increasingly uncomfortable, I heard a key in the lock. Tanner entered, grocery bags in hand, stopping short when he saw my parents. I didn't realize we had company, he said carefully. They were just leaving, I replied. After I make one thing very clear, I will not be apologizing for getting married on the date I planned, with the people who chose to be there. If anyone deserves an apology, it's me, for a lifetime of being treated as less important than Jackson. My father stood up, face flushed with anger. We have never treated you as less important. We love both our children equally. The evidence suggests otherwise, I said, nodding toward the spreadsheet still in my mother's hands. This is ridiculous, my father sputtered, keeping score like this. It's not about keeping score. It's about recognizing a pattern that's damaged me my entire life. Before either of my parents could respond, the doorbell rang again. Tanner, who had been quietly putting away groceries during our confrontation, went to answer it. To everyone's surprise, Jackson walked in. What are you doing here? I asked, genuinely shocked. Jackson had never once visited my apartment. Mom texted that they were coming to talk to you. I figured you'd be giving them a hard time about the wedding thing. He smirked, looking around dismissively. Nice place. Small, though. It's perfect for us, I replied evenly. But you still haven't explained why you're here. Jackson shrugged. Moral support for the parents. You can be pretty harsh, sis. I laughed, a sound devoid of humor. That's rich, coming from someone who deliberately scheduled a vacation during my wedding and then invited our parents along. I didn't force them to come, Jackson said. They're adults who make their own decisions. Are they? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like they've been letting you manipulate them for years. My mother stood up, her face pale. That's enough, Jillian. We came here hoping to mend fences, but clearly you're not ready to be reasonable. I'm being perfectly reasonable. I'm simply not accepting the blame for a situation you created. Jackson stepped forward, his expression darkening. You know what your problem is, Jillian? You've always been jealous of me. It's not my fault Mom and Dad prefer spending time with me. Maybe if you weren't so uptight and judgmental. Jackson, my father interrupted, looking uncomfortable. That's not helpful. But Jackson wasn't finished. No, they need to hear this. You know what, Jillian? I did schedule that trip knowing it was during your wedding. And I made sure to tell Mom and Dad how much fun it would be if they joined us. Because I knew they'd choose me. They always do. The room fell silent. My parents stared at Jackson in shock, while Tanner moved to stand beside me, his presence steady and supportive. What are you saying, Jackson? My mother finally asked, her voice small. I'm saying I've known for years that I'm the favorite. And I've used it. Why wouldn't I? When Jillian got that scholarship to Penn State, I made sure to have my basketball tournament the same weekend as her honors ceremony, because I knew you'd choose my game. When she graduated, I scheduled that softball game specifically so you'd have to leave her celebration early. My father's face had gone ashen. Son, that can't be true. Why not? It worked, didn't it? And it's not like it was hard. You two are so predictable. As Jackson continued his confession, growing more animated and smug with each revelation, I felt a strange sense of vindication. All those years I doubted myself, wondered if I was imagining the favoritism or exaggerating it in my mind, and here was proof that it had been even more deliberate than I'd realized. You know what else? Jackson continued, seemingly unable to stop now that he'd started. Remember when Jillian needed help with her student loans? And you said you couldn't afford to help because you were having financial troubles? That was the same month you paid off my credit card debt and bought me a new car. My mother put a hand to her mouth. Jackson, please stop. Why? She already knows she's second place. Always has been, always will be. Tanner, who had remained silent throughout this exchange, finally spoke. I think you should leave now. All of you. Jackson smirked. What's wrong? Can't handle the truth? The truth, Tanner said evenly, is that you're a manipulative person who's damaged his sister's relationship with her parents for his own ego, and they let it happen. But it stops today, at least in our home. My father seemed to have aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. He looked at me, then at Jackson, as if seeing us both clearly for the first time. Jillian, he said quietly, I don't know what to say. There's nothing to say right now, I replied. I think you all need to leave and think about what's happened here today. As they gathered their belongings, Jackson still defiant, my parents stunned and silent, I felt a strange calm. The truth was finally out in the open, ugly and undeniable. At the door, my mother turned back. Jillian, please. Not now, Mom. I need time. And so do you. To decide if you're willing to acknowledge what's happened and work to change it. Until then, I think it's best if we don't speak. After they left, Tanner held me as tears finally came, not tears of sadness, but of release. Decades of doubt and self-blame washed away with the confirmation that I hadn't imagined any of it. The favoritism had been real, and in Jackson's case, deliberate. Are you okay? Tanner asked when my tears subsided. No, I answered honestly. But I think, eventually, I will be. The 6 months following that confrontation were some of the most transformative of my life. With continued therapy and Tanner's unwavering support, I began the long process of rebuilding my self-worth without tying it to my parents' approval. Dr. Reeves helped me understand that their behavior reflected their limitations, not my value. Parents are just people, she reminded me during one session. Flawed, sometimes deeply damaged people who make mistakes. Recognizing this doesn't excuse their behavior, but it can help you stop internalizing it as a reflection of your worth. I maintained my distance from my family, not out of spite, but as a necessary boundary for my healing. I didn't block their numbers or social media accounts, but I didn't initiate contact either. Occasionally, my mother would send tentative texts, photos of their garden, questions about the weather in Philadelphia, surface-level communications that carefully avoided addressing what had happened. My relationship with Tanner's family deepened during this time. Sunday dinners at their home became a regular tradition, filling the void left by my own family with genuine warmth and acceptance. Linda taught me her secret recipes. Richard took an interest in my architectural projects. Their other children, Tanner's brother and sister, welcomed me as one of their own. Blood doesn't make a family, Linda told me one evening as we washed dishes together. Love does. Showing up does. And you'll always have that with us. Meanwhile, Tanner and I settled into married life, finding our rhythm as a couple and making our apartment truly ours. We hosted dinner parties for friends, took weekend trips to explore nearby towns, and began discussing our future plans, including the possibility of children someday. If we have kids, I told Tanner one night as we lay in bed, I want them to know they're equally valued, no favorites. Of course, he agreed, stroking my hair. We'll break the cycle. 4 months after our confrontation, I received an unexpected email from my father, sent from a new personal account, rather than the family email he shared with my mother. Dear Gillian, I've started and deleted this email a dozen times, unsure how to begin or what words could possibly address the harm that's been done. I'm sorry. Seems woefully inadequate, but it's where I need to start. I'm sorry. Deeply, profoundly sorry for the ways I've failed you as a father. Since that day in your apartment, I've been doing a lot of thinking, and, for the past 2 months, a lot of therapy. My therapist suggested writing this letter as a first step toward making amends, though she was clear that making amends doesn't guarantee forgiveness, nor should it demand it. What Jackson revealed about deliberately scheduling conflicts was shocking to me. But what's been more painful is recognizing how easily I went along with it. How consistently I chose his activities over yours without questioning the pattern. That failure is mine alone. I've had some difficult conversations with your mother and with Jackson. Your mother isn't ready to fully acknowledge her role in this yet, but I'm working on my part regardless. As for Jackson, I've made it clear that his manipulative behavior was deeply wrong, and I will not enable it anymore. This has created tension between us, but that's my burden to bear, not yours. I understand if you're not ready to respond to this letter, or if you choose not to respond at all. I'm not writing with expectations, only with the hope that you know I am truly sorry and am working to be better. With love and regret. Dad. I read the email several times, my emotions swinging from skepticism to cautious hope. I showed it to Tanner, who read it thoughtfully. What do you think? I asked. I think it sounds sincere, but you're the one who has to decide if you're ready to respond. I took the email to my next therapy session, where Dr. Reeves helped me process my mixed feelings. It's okay to be hopeful and guarded at the same time, she said. Reconciliation, if you choose to pursue it, should happen at your pace and with clear boundaries. After careful consideration, I replied to my father with a brief email suggesting we meet for coffee, just the two of us, at a neutral location. He responded immediately, agreeing to my terms. We met at a quiet cafe halfway between Philadelphia and my parents' home. My father looked older, more subdued than I remembered. The confident, often dismissive man I'd grown up with seemed diminished somehow. Thank you for meeting me, he said as we sat with our coffees. It means a lot. I appreciated your email, I replied carefully. But I need more than words, Dad. I need to know you understand what happened and are genuinely committed to change. He nodded, pulling a notebook from his bag. My therapist suggested I bring evidence of the work I've been doing. Not to pressure you, but to show you this isn't just talk. He slid the notebook across the table. Inside were journal entries, notes from therapy sessions, and what appeared to be written exercises about parenting and favoritism. One page listed specific instances where he had recognized his preferential treatment of Jackson, with reflections on how those choices had affected me. I've also been reading about family dynamics and daughter-father relationships, he added, pulling out a book with dozens of sticky notes marking pages. trying to understand where I went wrong and how to do better. I felt a lump forming in my throat. "And Mom, Jackson?" He sighed. "Your mother is struggling. She's been resistant to the idea of therapy, though she did attend one session with me. She still doesn't fully accept that our treatment of you and Jackson was unequal. It's hard for her to confront the possibility that she's been a less than perfect mother. And Jackson? That's been difficult." When I stopped automatically taking his side and began questioning his behavior, he didn't respond well. We had a major argument when I refused to loan him money for a new gaming system. He accused me of suddenly favoring you because of one little wedding. My father shook his head. It was enlightening, seeing his reaction when the preferential treatment stopped. We talked for nearly 2 hours, longer than I had planned. My father didn't make excuses or try to minimize the past. He listened when I described how their treatment had affected me, really listened in a way he never had before. Before we parted, he asked, "Would it be possible to try again, Jillian? To build a new kind of relationship? I understand if you need more time." I considered his question carefully. "I'm willing to take small steps, but I need you to understand that my boundaries are firm. I won't put myself in situations where I'm treated as less than again, even by Mom or Jackson." "That's more than fair," he agreed, "and more than I deserve." In the months that followed, my father and I established a cautious new connection. We met for occasional lunches, exchanged emails about books we were reading, and slowly built something that, while not erasing the past, offered a possibility for the future. My mother remained distant, uncomfortable with the new dynamics. She sent a birthday card with a gift certificate, but declined my invitation to meet for lunch. Jackson, predictably, responded with anger to the shifting family structure, accusing me of turning Dad against him and refusing any responsibility for his actions. A year after our wedding, Tanner planned a surprise anniversary party at his parents' home. Walking into their backyard to find friends and loved ones gathered to celebrate us was a moment of pure joy. Even more surprising was seeing my father standing somewhat awkwardly near the drinks table, alone. "He called me last week," Tanner explained when he noticed my shock. "Asked if he could come for a short while. I told him it was up to you, but that he'd be welcome if you were comfortable with it." I made my way through the crowd to where my father stood. "You came," I said simply. I wanted to acknowledge the day properly, since I missed the original. He handed me a small gift bag. It's not much, but inside was a card, handmade rather than store-bought. The cover showed a simple watercolor of a bridge. Inside, in my father's neat handwriting, "Jillian, a year ago, I made a choice I will always regret. I cannot go back and change it, but I can acknowledge today what I should have celebrated then. Your marriage to a wonderful man who sees and treasures the remarkable woman you are. I'm working to become the kind of father who deserves to be part of your life. Whether I earn that place or not, please know I am proud of you and the boundaries you've had the courage to establish. With love and respect, Dad." I blinked back tears as I read, touched by the effort and sincerity. It wasn't a magical fix to years of hurt, but it was a meaningful step. "Thank you for coming," I said, giving him a brief hug. "Would you like to stay for cake?" He smiled, relief evident in his eyes. "I'd like that very much." As the evening continued, I watched my father make an effort to talk with Tanner's parents, to engage with our friends, to be present in a way he never had been before. He left after an hour, not wanting to overstay his welcome, with a promise to call the following week. Later that night, as Tanner and I reflected on our first year of marriage and the party, I realized something important. The family I had always craved, the one that valued and supported me unconditionally, wasn't a fantasy. It existed not in the home where I grew up, but in the one I was building now, with Tanner, with his parents who had embraced me as a daughter, with friends who showed up consistently, and maybe, in time, with a version of my father who was working to change. "Do you think you'll ever fully reconcile with your parents?" Tanner asked as we got ready for bed. "With my father, Maybe. If he continues the work he's doing. With my mother? I don't know. And with Jackson? Probably not, unless he has a major change of heart. And are you okay with that? I considered the question carefully. Yes. Because I've realized that while I can't choose the family I was born into, I can choose the family I create. And I've chosen well. Tanner pulled me close. We both have. As we celebrate our first anniversary today, I look back on the painful journey that led us here with a new perspective. The wedding day my parents missed became the first day of a marriage that's stronger than I could have imagined. Their absence created space for genuine love and support to surround us. If you're facing family dynamics that diminish rather than nurture you, please know this. You deserve to be valued. You deserve to be seen. And sometimes, creating boundaries with those who cannot give you that basic respect is the most loving choice you can make, not just for yourself, but for the authentic family you're meant to build. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision about family relationships? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone. Thank you for listening. And I wish you the courage to create the family bonds that nurture your true self, whether they're bound by blood or by choice.